The Paladin does it all. It's charismatic, tanky, and delivers high damage. It's great in multi-classes or as a solo class. So in this video, we'll be breaking down what the best subclass for the Paladin is on a tier list. Each of the 5 subclasses comes with unique abilities at levels 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, and each of them comes with their own unique spells, although some get less than others. Now this tier list will be taking into account full pure builds, so if you take the Crown Paladin all the way to level 12, this is likely the best of the 5. However, if you're going to multi-class, then the Vengeance and Ancient Paladins become a little bit better, but we'll be comparing all things related to these in this video. Now first, the level 1 abilities. So you get a few bonus action ones and a few action ones, and I honestly, the ones that are bonus actions are much better here. With the Oath of the Ancients giving you a Healing Radiance, which does, it's your Paladin level plus your proficiency bonus plus your charisma modifier for healing. So this will do it on the turn that you use it and on the start of the next turn. So this is a nice little bit of healing here as a bonus action. Devotion has the Holy Rebuke, so you can make an aura for your team that reflects 1d4 of radiant damage to any attackers for 2 turns. This uses a full action, however. The Vengeance Paladin comes with Inquisitor's Might, which applies additional charisma modifier of radiant damage, and it can daze targets. Now, when a target's dazed, they're more likely to fail, or they have disadvantage on wisdom saves. So things like command and hold person become much more powerful if you use Inquisitor's Might. The Oath of the Crown actually has a really good ability here, and you can use this on your team. So the Righteous Clarity will add your proficiency bonus, which can be up to +4 once you hit level 9, to an attack roll. This is great because Great Weapon Master is a -5 to attack rolls, so you can offset that by adding a +4 to a teammate's attack rolls, and this lasts for 10 turns, so that's really useful as well. And the Oathbreaker comes with a Spiteful Suffering, which gives advantage on attack rolls and additional necrotic damage each turn, but this uses your full action here and has a charisma save, which is a pretty good save, but they also get to save it every single turn. As far as level 1 abilities go, I think the Oath of the Crown is the best here because the Righteous Clarity can offset Great Weapon Master. The Oath of Vengeance is nice too because you can actually set up that dazed, but also Oath of the Ancients comes with the Healing Radiance. So I'm going to start off with showcasing this first, the Oath of the Crown here, and again, get that Righteous Clarity, which is great. This class really excels in higher levels because once you hit level 3, it's the only class or subclass that does not get unique spells here. So it gets Compel, Duel, and Command, which the Paladin already gets, where every other subclass gets something unique. Like Devotion gets Sanctuary, the Vengeance Paladin gets Hunter's Mark, which would be some really great early game damage, and Hellish Rebuke for the Oathbreaker Paladin. But in return, we get the second best, I would say, Channel Oath abilities here with the Channel Champions Challenge, and I actually think the best one belongs to the Oath of Vengeance, which we'll get to here soon. But the Champions Challenge makes every target on your team get disadvantage on the attacks coming towards them, which forces the enemy's AI to mostly attack your character. This is great because, again, you're tanky, so you can take those hits, and this is a bonus action ability with a wisdom save, so you're decently likely to land this early game, which can be great because this can help keep your casters alive. And if you need to heal, you also have alternatively the Turn the Tide, which does a 1d6 plus your Paladin level and your charisma modifier for healing. So it's a pretty decent heal. I do find the Champions Challenge to be a little bit more effective. There are some other abilities similar to this, but this is the one that I noticed that worked the best. Here's where the benefits really start to begin. You get Spiritual Weapon, which is a very useful bonus action because I mentioned the Dazed condition earlier. The Maul Spiritual Weapon can apply Dazed on its attack. This is great because you can set up and be able to land your commands and hold person so much easier with this, and it'll take aggro away from your team because the Spiritual Weapon has lower armor class. It's actually nice to have 2 of these floating around in the battlefield because it just directs attacks away, and it does a good bit of damage here, chip damage. You also get the Rewarding Bond spell, which is okay, but I think the big thing here is the Spiritual Weapon. Level 7 gives us the Divine Allegiance, and we can kind of cheese this. So when an ally within 1.5 meters of you takes damage, that's really small, just a heads up there, small range, you can use your reaction to magically substitute your own health for your allies taking the damage instead of them. So where this becomes crazy is you can actually use potions of radiant resistance because the damage that you take will be radiant damage. Now there's actually a caveat here because if you have radiating orb gear, you actually apply that the negatives to your attack rolls to yourself using the radiating orb. So just be mindful, you will take radiant damage. So that can be unfortunate or a good thing depending on how you planned for this. And level 9 gives us I think this is the single best Paladin ability, which is kind of funny because it's a cleric ability, Spirit Guardians. This is great because it makes the Oath of the Crown Paladin one of the best Radiating Orb gear users in the game because they can go around applying Radiating Orbs on multiple enemies, and they'll also at level 11 get Radiant damage on their main attack. So anything that does Radiant damage with those Radiating Orb gears is going to be crazy for protecting your team because it's effectively when you apply like a -10 to an enemy's attack rolls, that's essentially like your entire team gains 10 AC against that one enemy. So this becomes very useful, and I think, again, this is probably the best Paladin ability, which is funny, is a Cleric ability. This just speaks to the effectiveness that is Spirit Guardians. Now, another caveat here. Spirit Guardians can only affect one enemy per turn. So what this means is if you have a Cleric and your Paladin both running Spirit Guardians, you can't actually hit the same enemy twice on your turn, so just a little heads up on that. And as mentioned, every Paladin gets this ability at level 11. It's an additional 1d8 of radiant damage on their melee attacks. As mentioned, this allows you to stack radiating orbs on all your melee attacks when you get close to the enemy, and a bunch of other ways that we can enhance this with gear. So this is actually a really strong subclass, and I'd actually have to say, if we're going to rank it on the tier list, it's going to be a high tier, just because it's, again, it's got the most powerful ability with getting Spirit Guardians. It can use the Divine Allegiance to protect your team, and you can offset that damage. So you take half damage as this Radiant using a Radiant Resistance potion. So there's a lot of ways you can utilize this. You get the Spiritual Weapon. You can draw all enemies aggro towards yourself. This is like the true tanky Paladin class of Baldur's Gate 3. And if you have a Cleric that can keep it alive, or if you get a Barbarian throwing health potions and use a Periaptive Wound Closure to maximize your healing, you can be one tanky, hard to remove enemy. And that's just incredible. I was thinking about putting this in the A tier, but honestly, getting Spirit Guardians is such a big boost. That's part of the reason why people do the multi-class of 2 levels of the Paladin with 10 levels of the Bard, because the Bard gets magical secrets. Getting access to some incredibly powerful spells is such a big boost, but even still, if you do that route, you still get if you were to do only 2 levels of the Crown Paladin, you still get the Righteous Clarity, which is a massive buff to anyone's attack rate. So moving on from the Crown Paladin, we'll go to the Devotion, because it kind of filled a role similar to what the Crown Paladin did prior to it getting released. We'll then follow this up with the Vengeance, Ancients, and then finally the Oathbreaker. But with the Oath of Devotion, again, you get the full action Channel Oath charge here that will protect your team. Well, not really protect them, it just reflects a 1d4 radiant damage against attackers, which is okay. I wouldn't fully recommend using your full action for only 2 turns of that. The damage output from that is not going to be very high. And if you're going against spellcasters or bow users, which you likely are, it has no effects against them. It's only melee attacks. So that does have a big drawback. I think this may be the worst level 1 ability just because it's very situational, and even when it's utilized, it's not that great. Their level 3 ability, Sacred Weapon, is kind of similar to the Oath of the Crown Paladin's Righteous Clarity. However, I think this is worse. Technically, it is better because it makes your weapon into a sacred weapon. It adds your charisma modifier to attack rolls, which again is really good. At this point in the game, at level 3, you're likely maxed out at 16 unless you got the Hag's Hair at this level, which would put it at 18, so a +3 or +4 to your weapon attack rolls. So, I mean, that's great. For 10 turns too, pretty nice. But it eats your entire action. So that's another thing you got to consider. It's going to be a good use, but you do have to kind of pre-prep to utilize this. And Turn the Unholy is okay. Like, if you get a Cleric, they kind of have a similar ability. And I don't find the Turn ability to be all that great because your Divine Smites are going to deal extra damage to undead. So, yeah, I think the Sacred Weapon was great leading into patch 8, but after patch 8, the Oath of the Crown kind of does what this class does, but better. This costing a full action is kind of unfortunate, but again, pre-preparing this can be a good use. But again, the bonus action ability from the Crown is just a little better. You do get the bonus action Sanctuary at level 3 though, which is nice because no other Paladin can get that, which is great, but you're likely running a Cleric, and that's a spell that the Cleric can always grab, so that's one thing, I guess. It's a good bonus action ability, but you may have other ways of utilizing this. The level 5 Channel Oath spells are Silence, which is okay. I mean, it's good. Being able to set down a bubble of non-spellcasting is great. Lesser Restoration is something that the Paladin already gets, and it's a lackluster spell. The level 7 ability Aura of Devotion is pretty poo-poo. Only being able to resist charm is not crazy good. Yeah, there's not really many opportunities where you're going to get charm to get screwed over too bad. And its level 9 Oath spells suck too, because Remove Curse is part of the Paladin spell list. Not super useful because you can grab that anytime. And Beacon of Hope, I mean, your allies will regain the maximum hit point possible when healed. That's good, but that does require your concentration and a full action to use. And there's one thing that you can do is use the Periaptive Wound Closure from Act 1 and put that on the target you need to receive healing. So this just ends up being okay. This also gives advantage on wisdom saving throws, but if you have the Resonance Stone, that'll just kind of negate that. So I don't know. I think that this is an okay subclass, but there's better. With Holy Rebuke taking an action, Sacred Weapon taking an action, although Sacred Weapon looks really cool. I just want to point that out. It makes your weapon glow, which looks awesome, and especially on some hammers like this one here. But, yeah, Aura of Devotion, not good. Their spell list, not good. And everything here requiring an action point is kind of unfortunate, although you only get to choose between the Sacred Weapon or the Holy Rebuke. Yeah, it's a bit lackluster. And I think actually the existence of the Crown Paladin here in the S tier makes this one look a little bit worse by comparison. It's probably, I mean, no Paladin subclass is bad. Like, I kind of want to put this into the C tier just because I feel like it's outclassed in pretty much every metric by the Crown Paladin. But I might be nice and put it in the B tier because, again, all Paladin subclasses are good. Yeah, we'll just leave in B tier. Now, my first run through the game was the Oath of Vengeance Paladin. It's one of my favorite subclasses in the game, and not just because it's the second easiest Paladin. You have a really good time with not breaking your oath compared to like the Crown, Devotion, and Ancients Paladin. You can get away with a lot. You do swear vengeance, so if you take the Hag's Hair in Act 1, for example, that's not refilling your vengeance for getting revenge. So that unfortunately will break your oath, but that's it has one of the least opportunities to break your oath. However, as mentioned, Inquisitor's Might's great. This can set up your commands, and Hold Person, which this Paladin actually gets. When I said the Paladin, Crown Paladin gets the Spirit Guardians, and that's the best Paladin ability. It's kind of a cheat. The actual best Paladin ability that belongs to the Paladin is Vow of Enmity. This doesn't sound as good as it seems on paper because you gain advantage on attack rolls against an enemy. This works in mysterious ways. So Sacred Weapon being one of the best things the Devotion Paladin gets by adding the Charisma modifier to attack rolls, well, you can get advantage on attack rolls, which is much better, and you can get this on every enemy. Here's one simple trick on how. So this is a bonus action ability. You can actually apply this to yourself, and as a patch 8, this still works, so I think it's intended, and now you have advantage on attack rolls against anybody for 10 turns. So this obviously becomes really strong because now advantage, 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 advantage. My poor teammates, I will hit them and not miss. Paladins typically want to run Great Weapon Master, and now they can without much fear because getting advantage on those attack rolls is massive. And yeah, it's just a really good ability. We also get the Abjure Enemy, which can frighten an enemy. They'll have disadvantage and on ability checks and attack rolls, and they cannot move for 3 turns. And if they save, they'll be slowed instead, which is not bad actually. However, Vow of Enmity is just so much better. The crazy part is this doesn't require concentration, so you can pop that on yourself. Next turn, you can pop Hunter's Mark, and that'll give you additional damage on your attacks, which is just crazy. Remember how I said the Vengeance Paladin is the best for multiclassing? It's because once you get to level 5, this gives you Misty Step and Hold Person, 2 spells that are extremely valuable. So you don't have to go all the way to level 9 to get some of the best abilities out of this class. It's front loaded with level 3 giving you something great and level 5 giving you also something amazing. Hold Person is such a great spell because critical hits will add additional damage die to your attacks, and Divine Smite benefits from this twice. You're double dipping on those extra die, making it extremely powerful. You can even go a step further and play as an orc, but this is super useful, and also Misty Step. So Misty Step, again, extra mobility allows you to get in, attack someone. It's so good. You also can run that Band of the Mystic Scoundrel with this, and this allows you to cast Hold Person command as bonus actions. And if you're using the Helmet of Arcane Acuity, you can stack up your Arcane Acuity so that you can land these spells without worry. Now, it isn't all good with the Oath of Vengeance Paladin. I'm not going to be biased here. This is possibly one of the worst level 7 abilities. Relentless Avenger. If you hit an enemy with an opportunity attack, your movement speed is increased by 4.5 meters in your next turn. Unless you're running Sentinel or anything that's going to allow you to get opportunity attacks, yeah, you're not going to likely be utilizing this too much, but it is nice to get that extra movement speed. I mean, this may be a little bit better than the Oath of Devotion's level 7 ability, but I still think it's not that great. And finally, the level 9 spell that you get is Haste, which is incredible. Haste is so good. You can apply Haste to yourself, and then that's going to give you an extra action. So automatically, once you use Haste, you can attack for 2 extra attacks with +2 to your armor class and doubled movement speed. Haste is really good. Best utilized from a sorcerer because they can twin it to 2 people instead of 1. And you also get protection from energy, which is cool. But yeah, Haste is great. Now, I see a lot of people call the Vengeance Paladin overrated, and they may not be aware that you can apply a Vow of Enmity onto yourself, but I do think the Vengeance Paladin is possibly the best subclass. Oathbreaker is great too, however, but we'll get to that. Being able to give yourself advantage on all attack rolls is great. Hold Person, a very valuable spell, and everyone can benefit from having this as well. You also get Hunter's Mark for a good early to mid-game damage. Even late-game damage is pretty solid. And Misty Step. You're great for multiclassing. You can take, like, one of the best multiclasses for the Paladin in Honor Mode is Sorcerer. This allows you to not have to worry about taking Misty Step or Hold Person from your Sorcerer because a Sorcerer doesn't get that many spells. Same thing with the Warlock, you get a nice spread between them, but in Honor Mode, you don't get that extra attack stacking, so you probably don't want to run those 2 together. Typical splits would be like 6-6 because you get the Aura Protection, Charisma modifier 2 saving throws, which is an incredible ability. Or if you were to take level 7 of the like Sorcerer instead, you can get like Ice Storm, which can be quickened. So you can do like 2 smites and then do a quickened Ice Storm, which is pretty crazy damage. But yeah, the Vengeance Paladin is extremely powerful in a variety of different ways. I guess I should throw that up into the S tier, and I would actually say it's better than the Oath of the Crown. just because it has a better early, like it's front loaded a bit more. At level 5, you can multi-class out, whereas at the Oath of the Crown Paladin, you typically want to take that to level 9 because Spirit Guardians is such a good ability. But if you were to do a 2-level dip, this is where the things change because the Righteous Clarity is a little bit better. Being able to add your proficiency bonus to enemy or teammates' attack rolls is much better than the days that you get. But that's only for 1 level, really, of abilities from the 2 of these, so I do think Vengeance is a little bit better. And if you're to duke these out 1v1, Haste versus Spirit Guardians, I think Haste actually wins in terms of damage output, but defensively, the Oath of the Crown is really good. So that's kind of my 2 cents on those two. And next was Oath of the Ancients, which is really easy of a oath to break, but this is a good ability. Again, Healing Radiance adds your Paladin level plus your Charisma modifier plus your proficiency bonus, so you can actually get a decent bit of healing there. And yeah, it's going to heal you twice, and bonus action ability, great. Now, Ancients get some weird spells for their oath. Speak with Animals is kind of useless because there's so many Speak with Animal potions, and you probably end your games with like 20 of them in your inventory, so please use those. Also, Ensnaring Strike is not that great either, as it eats up your bonus action. Not that we have a lot of really great bonus action abilities aside from our heal, but hey, Nature's Wrath, also not that great. Restraining an enemy, they cannot move. Attack rolls against them have advantage. Their attack rolls and dexterity saves have disadvantage, which is it's just okay, I guess. Strength save, and you use your Channel Oath charge and a full action. If that was a bonus action, it'd make the subclass a lot better. And they turn to Faithless. This will turn Phase and Fiends, which is okay too for 3 turns. At level 5, they get Misty Step as well, but instead of getting Hold Person, they get Moonbeam, which is okay, I guess. Moonbeam's not really going to be your main source of damage because a 2d10 Radiant could easily just be a Divine Smite instead, which would be a lot more damage, and you could do it twice. So this is something you're likely never going to use. If you use Moonbeam as a Paladin, please let me know in the comments. I just don't think that this is something that ever gets any utilization, but the Misty Step gets quite a bit of usage. Now, as for the best level 7 ability, this one is with the Oath of the Ancients because this is crazy. Aura of Warding, you and nearby allies only take half the damage from spells. And this aura disappears if you fall unconscious, so just don't fall unconscious, but it's permanent. And it's only 3 meters. Now, if you're using mods to increase your spell or your level, you can actually increase the range of this because your auras will increase in range as you level up past level 12. Just Baldur's Gate 3 obviously has that limitation, so you can kind of extend this because 3 meters around yourself, that's not too much, but it's like a fireball basically. It's still really good though, so that's a really nice ability, especially if you huddle up together. Although if you huddle up together, it's more likely you're going to hit with things like Volley, which unfortunately does give you that full damage, unlike a fireball, which would be half. As for level 9 abilities, I think that Plant Growth is actually a really good spell. It's underutilized for sure. You just got to watch out if you have anyone with fire damage, it will burn that grass up really quickly, but this doesn't require concentration and it'll quarter movement speed, so you can actually set this up in a pretty good way. Protection from energy, not a bad spell either, but yeah. Now, Healing Radiance really starts to pick up when you get into higher levels. You can potentially do like, I think it's like 23 or 24, maybe 25 max because it adds your proficiency bonus, Paladin level, and your Charisma modifier. So depending on if you max out those stats, you can actually get this to do pretty good amounts of healing. However, again, it is a only kind of one-time use because it's Channel Oath charge, so that eats that up when you could have used it on something else that I pretty much prefer rather using like Vow of Enmity or the Righteous Clarity from the Crown Paladin, but nothing special here. Outside of Misty Step, the spell list is just fair. Again, Ensnaring Strike is not that good. Moonbeam, you're never going to use it. The really best part is the Aura of Warding and the heal that you bring to your team. I do think that this is a really good, yeah, it's a good subclass, again, because it is a Paladin. But your biggest things being, again, mostly stuff that you get either at level 1 or level 7. So yeah, it has some of the best, it had the best level 7 ability here, but I think it's an Oath of Ancients A for Ancients. We'll put it in the A tier. I think it's a very solid one, but the Crown Paladin and the Vengeance just are a little bit better, I believe. As for the Oathbreaker at level 1, Spiteful Suffering can be okay. The necrotic damage is delayed. It gives you advantage on attack rolls, which is great. However, again, Crown Paladin can give you that proficiency bonus added to attack rolls, which is going to be very useful. Getting advantage is nice too, but you can also get that level 3 of the Vengeance Paladin. So this eating up a full action and a Channel Oath charge is just not as good as it seems. Now, Control Undead, I think, is actually one of the most fun abilities because this lets you take control of an undead creature and it'll follow you around and attack your enemies until long rest. This is actually, it's pretty generous in what it can apply to. You can control the Death Shepherds in Act 1, which are very powerful. If you're in Act 2, you can turn pretty much anything into a zombie in the Shadow Curse lands and then take control of them. Most notably using the Spectator Flask, throwing it away, letting it die and turn into a zombie, and then you can control it with the Control Undead. And that's pretty powerful, especially into some of the harder fights of Act 2. And actually a fun one later on in the game is the Echo of Ilisera, which is part of the Murder Tribunal. She's counted as undead, so you can actually apply this to her. Now you can't unfortunately use it against any story bosses because they have to be a lower level than you, but if you're using mods to give yourself a higher level, you can utilize this spell in some pretty crazy things like Answer. And Dreadful Aspect is meh. I mean, being able to frighten nearby creatures in a 9-meter radius is actually pretty good as a wisdom save, but it's just not as fun as Control Undead. I will admit it is useful, but taking up your full action just to frighten targets is sometimes just not as good. The Touch of the Death Monk, which is a mod in Baldur's Gate 3, also gets the same ability, but yeah, I don't know. It's a full action wisdom save. It's a good ability, but not as fun as some of the others. You also get Hellish Rebuke as a unique spell, which is okay. It's not crazy good, but also Inflict Wound, which another one that's just okay, because you'd rather just do your Divine Smite. Now we also get the Darkness spell, which is something we can't utilize unless you take the Steel Watcher helmet, the Eversight ring, or the spear you get if you go evil in the end of Act 2. So it's kind of limited in its use, unless you multi-class into the Warlock, which is something I'd highly recommend, because at level 2 they can take Devil's Sight, and then you can see in this magical darkness, which is a very strong strategy. Crown of Madness is okay too. I mean, it's a good one. And for the most misunderstood ability in Baldur's Gate 3, Orb of Hate is not as good as you think it is. I get comments all the time regarding this one, and it's just not that great because the damage has to be dealt with melee weapons. So if you have undead on your side, they're likely attacking with claws or unarmed attacks, which don't benefit from this. However, enemies that you fight against will benefit from this. So that additional charisma modifier you're adding to their damage, it applies to, weirdly enough, Cambions, which you don't have unless you take Will's Sword, the Infernal Rapier, because that can give you the ability to summon in a Cambion. However, you don't get one naturally. And you can also, I guess, use the Control Undead to take advantage of this, but it has to be an enemy with a weapon. So most of the time, you're not actually benefiting your team whatsoever, because undead, if you have Create Undead, they're all going to be using unarmed attacks, so those don't work. You literally have to have a teammate with the Cambion, which the Cambion's the worst planar ally. The Genie and the Diva are much better than it, so you'd have to utilize something that's not even that great, and you don't really do a big benefit for it. So Orb of Hate, oddly enough, is something you sometimes just don't want to activate, because if you fight against fiends or anything that's undead and uses a weapon, they'll get that extra damage against you, and it's melee weapons, so they have to be at close range, and they'll automatically proc this every single time. So just wanted to put a little note on this, because I get lots of comments being like, this buffs up your zombies so much. Yeah, they have to have a melee weapon, unfortunately. So that really cuts down the amount of availability that this would benefit. So just a little note there. And it isn't until level 9 where we get Animate Dead and Bestow Curse, which kind of is not that great, but Animate Dead is a fun spell. Unfortunately, we don't get the higher level spell slots to get some of the more fun abilities, and a Necromancer Wizard can just summon 2 at a time, but it's something that doesn't benefit from our Orb of Hate. So the Oathbreaker, it gets not the greatest spells. I'd say the best spell would be Darkness, but again, if you play as a Drow, you get Darkness, and you have to multi-class to be able to utilize that. Orb of Hate is much worse than it seems. It looks cool, but it's not that great, as I mentioned. And again, spell list is terrible, but I think the biggest thing is the Control Undead, and it has so many really useful times where you can actually take advantage of it and get an undead that's going to be very strong that could benefit from your Orb of Hate. The Spiteful Suffering is not good, I'll be honest, not great. But yeah, you do get the fun to use Control Undead. Dreadful Aspect's alright as well, because you can only use one of the 2 of these, and I'd probably prefer using Control Undead, but what you can do is use Control Undead, Short Rest to get your Channel Oath back, and then use Dreadful Aspect in your next combat encounter, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, I don't think the Oathbreaker is as good as people give it credit for. Hellish Rebuke is nice, and I guess Inflict Wounds, not really that great when you got Smites. I'd have to say it's A tier as well, though. It is better than Devotion Paladin, but I don't think it's as good as the Ancients Paladin. And there we have it. There is our, I guess, our recap. The Vengeance Paladin, it's just front-loaded, but if you take it to level 9 or 12, it's going to be powerful as well, because it gets the access to Haste, Vow of Enmity to give it advantage on attack rolls against all enemies for 10 turns. It also gets Misty Step, Hold Person, just a really great spell list overall. Good if you're multiclassing, good if you're full leveling. And I want to give it an also really good ability here is the Oath of the Crown Paladin, getting the ability to protect its teammates. It gets Spirit Guardians and a lot of other really great stuff. But if you're going to go with level 5, the Vengeance Paladin just wins out. Level 9, they're kind of tied, and I would again say the Vengeance Paladin probably edges it out in terms of actual damage output, from Haste being a bit better in Spirit Guardians in that aspect. But if you're going for a defensive Paladin, the Crown Paladin's the best defensive, and Vengeance is the best offensive Paladin. Oath of the Ancients also makes a great defensive paladin with the ability to heal your teammates and gets a pretty decent spell list as well. And then we also got the Oathbreaker, as mentioned. It's got some abilities which are a bit confusing and some of it's a bit clunky. However, Control Undead is such a fun ability and actually one of the coolest abilities in all of Baldur's Gate 3. I wish there was another way to get this because I think it's just a really great, a fun ability. And in the worst, we got the Devotion Paladin, which just, the Crown Paladin's existence pushes this down. So yeah, that is the Paladins in Baldur's Gate 3. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm using the Knights and Dames mod here for the armor, so if you're curious about what I'm rocking. And I'm also using the Faerun Colors mod to give myself that dye here, and it's the Amon-Natar dye there. So yeah, if you want to recreate this look, that's how. But hit the subscribe button below if you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you all in the next one, and hope you have a great day.